Trophy in one hand, check in the other hand. Back-to-back winner of Fishermania, Andy the Bagger.
Well, ladies and gents, welcome to part 2 and day 2. The conditions are completely different and so is the venue. This is Makings Fishery just outside Coventry, and after the last match being as tight as Ringer's trousers after lockdown, literally this is a one-match shootout. Anything can happen, and here come the boys. Morning chaps, how are we feeling?
Good. Confident.
Nice. Now, Bagger, 7 ounces mate. Did you manage to get some sleep after that last one?
Yeah, it's nothing, is it? It's not even a fish on here, so I would say we're pretty much drawing as we stand, so.
Yeah. A second Fishermania title helps though, doesn't it?
Yeah, it gives me a bit of confidence, so hopefully bring that on today.
On a roll, well done mate. Steve, little birdie tells me you've been down for a few practices.
Just not on this lake.
But it was on another lake.
No, it's a good 15 years since I fished this one, so I'm bang up to date. But no, it's carp. I've got a chance.
So you're 1 up, but it is literally anything goes on the day.
I'm 1 up.
7 ounces. Right, okay, so Bagger, you called it last time. Steve, you get to call it this time. Any preferences?
Heads.
All right, mate. Good luck, boys. It's a tails. Andy.
So I'm going to pick what I think is the best peg everyone's been talking about. That's 21.
It's black with them underneath that tree, mate. It's my little tip of the day. Guys, you've got an hour, okay? 5-hour match. So literally anything goes today, all right? Good luck. Let the best man win.
Good luck.
Cheers, Dave.
If this one's half as good as the last match, we're all in for a treat.
Since the first match, I've been doing a bit of practice. Obviously, I've got a 1-0 lead, even if it is by 7 ounces, so put a bit of practice in. Downside is I've been practicing lake 2, because I thought that's where we were going, but there's a bit of work going on lake 2, so it's too noisy to film. I'd actually felt like I had a bit of an edge there, and I had an advantage, but that's gone. We're on lake 4. So I do know lake 4. It's probably 7-8 years ago since I last fished it, but I do know a little bit about it. If I'd have had a choice, I'd have had Andy's swim, but beggars can't be choosers.
Feeling confident, even though I've never been to the venue, I still feel pretty confident. Big carp fishing is very similar throughout the country. Fished a few venues like this now, what I would class as a deep venue, so it's sort of 8 to 12 foot out in the middle. So tactics wise, you know, I'm confident in what I'm doing. Even though I've never been to the lake, I think it'll be quite simple fishing.
Setup wise, I'm pretty much going to set the kitchen sink up. I'm going to set a couple of waggler rods, a bomb, maybe a feeder. It's a bit deep for feeder, but I might set it up just in case it's really hard and I want to sort of chuck it and leave it. And a long pole. I haven't got as much water as Andy to fish into, so I'm going to start on the pole, I'm pretty sure, and then maybe work out, but maybe long pole shallow to start, and then sort of feel my way in. But it's going to depend what I can see. If I can see fish moving, that long pole shallow could be really good. If not, I could be on the bomb a lot earlier than I expect.
When you look at all the cards on the table for this match, it's almost the complete opposite side of the coin from the last one. Ringer was in the flyer, now Bennett's in the flyer. Ringer's wishing he won by £70 and it was only 7 ounces. So actually, my money's on Bennett right now. He's got the swim that they both wanted today. There's definitely been more fish show his side of the lake. And actually, interestingly, for me, very rarely do we see someone of Steve Ringer's calibre with his back up against the wall. I want to see how he deals with that. Today's going to be interesting.
Winning Fishermania for the second time, obviously it's going to give me loads of confidence. I feel like I'm fishing well, but I don't feel like it's going to put Steve off at all. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's been in high pressure situations before, so it's just another day at the office for him, as it is for me. So we'll just go about us fishing and hopefully may the best man win.
Taking on Andy Bennett's always going to be difficult. He's just become double Fisho champ, so he's going to be even more confident. But as I say, the bigger they are, the harder they fall.
Ringer, you might be in your own backyard, but the double champ is going to show you exactly what he's made of.
Well, chaps, I make that time. Steve, are you ready?
Ready?
Andy, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Good luck, chaps. May the best man win. All in. Well, it's clear they've both gone out on the jam roll at the start. Steve up in the water on the long pole, and it hasn't taken him long, a couple of minutes of feeding, and he's got one on now. Looks like a decent fish. Bagger, unfortunately, had a bite at the same time and pulled out of it, so yeah, good start on the right hand side, not so good on the left. Well, for those of you that think you're the only ones that lose fish, we've got two of the very best in the business here. We're 10 minutes into the match and they've both lost fish, so it happens to the best. But with these guys, it don't faze them. They keep fighting, they keep focused, and it won't affect the match. The first part of the match, both guys started on the pole, one long, one short, one up, one down, but it was evident the fish hadn't quite settled on their lines. Let's rewind and find out their faults to find out exactly why they started where they did.
After being given peg 19, which I didn't think was the favoured peg, hence Andy chose 21, 19's a little bit narrower to the rope, and in my head I thought I might be able to fish long pole all day, and I thought 16 metres would give me an advantage. I was on a slight point compared to Andy, so I thought if I fish 16, I'm a little bit further out than him and I might be able to fish that all day. So I went out 16 metres shallow, slapping an 8mm, just feeding a few 6mm over the top. Not a lot of bait, I didn't feed past it. I knew the waggler and maybe the bomb could come into play, but my plan was if I could stay on the pole all day, then that was my best chance of winning. But in my head I was thinking 20 minutes on the pole, slapping an 8mm, and I won't feed past it, because if I feed past it for the waggler, I'll be stopping fish coming onto that pole line. So I gave it the 20 minutes, I had one early fish, so it worked to a degree, but then I had to sort of kick that waggler line in and start feeding past the pole.
For me, there's lots of different baits that you could use on the short line, i.e. meat, corn, hard pellets. There seems to be a trend lately though that a lot of these carp venues where there's a lot of smaller fish like roach and stuff like that, hard pellets just seem to be the in bait. The fish just seem to love them. It's like their staple diet, if you like. There's two ways of going about it. You can either fish 6mm hard pellets or you can fish 8mm hard pellets. The reason I chose to fish 6mm is I feel you can feed a little bit more bait, you can be a little bit more aggressive, and that's because the particle is a little bit smaller. With 8mm, you can't feed too many because it's such a big particle, so you can't really attack your pegs. So that's the reason I chose to fish 6mm. To start the session off, I fed it just with a pole pot. I just wanted to see if there was any fish lingering in that area, so I just went in and just cupped in sort of 8 or 10 pellets from a little bit of a height to create a bit of noise. I wanted the fish to hear the pellets and hopefully just home in on a little tight area. When I weren't getting bites, then I felt like I needed to attract fish into my peg, and the best way of doing this is by making noise. So I started loose feeding a few pellets as well.
My rig for long pole shallow was a Mick Wilkinson cookie. I set it 18 inches deep with 3 number 10s straight under the float. Then I was slapping an 8mm, so I had a size 16 Super MWG. Main line was 017 N-gauge to an 015 hook length 4-inch. And I set the float sort of 18 inches with a view to maybe sort of varying it up. I do know that the fish on Lake 4, they don't tend to come really high, so I like to fish it a little bit deeper than what I normally would.
Starting off with the elastic, I used a black hydro elastic. I wanted something that I could get the fish under control with, but being a nice hollow elastic, it's pretty soft on the strike, so you're not going to be bumping fish off. Moving on to the line itself, I fished 019 main line, which is N-gauge, and then the hook length was 017. I also had a real nice heavy strong wire hook on, which was a 16s SMWG. Float wise, I was fishing in about 5 foot of water, so I opted for a 0.4 of a gram Pinger, which is a carbon stem float with a bit of a body on it, so it's got a little bit of stability if the lake started towing, but because the wind was off my back, presentation was quite easy. That's why I opted for carbon over a wire stem. Shotting wise, again, nice and positive. We're fishing quite heavy baits here, 6mm, possibly even an 8mm on the hook, so I went for a dead simple shotting pattern. 6 inches from my hook, I had one number 8 dropper, which was a cube. You can use shots or cubes, but when I'm catching big fish, I prefer cubes because they don't ping off the line as easy as shot can. And then 6 inches above that, I had a bulk of cubes, in which again was made up of number 8s. So I've got sort of one bulk, one dropper, and then my hook bait. Nice and positive. I just want to keep my rig nice and still. A lot of the time, I'm just lowering my bait into position.
Andy, I'm sitting up there watching, mate. We're half hour in, Steve's on his third method. I know you're prepping a few lines, but you're sitting on that 5 metre line. Are you seeing signs? Why haven't you moved? Talk me through your thinking.
I've had one and I've lost 2, but I've missed 2 or 3 bites, and
Right.
because there's such a big stamp of fish, I don't really want to come off it. I feel like it's worth one more fish, and normally they're bigger fish here, so I feel like one more bite could be £10, so I'm just reluctant just to come off it just yet, but it won't be long, another 10 minutes, and if I've not had any more signs, then I'll go, but I feel like there was an odd fish to be had there, that's why I've not moved.
And what's your next line? Again on the pole, but longer?
Well, Steve started on that, he had a couple of bites early, so yeah, I'll probably go out and have a quick 5 minutes on it. If it doesn't go, I feel like most of the day will be spent on the rod, to be honest.
Right, buddy, right. Nice one, good luck.
Cheers, Dean.
It's a beer can.
You drowning your sorrows already?
Something like that.
In, Andy's literally stayed on the 5 metre line up until now. However, he changed about 30 seconds ago, went up in the water on the pole a little bit longer, bang, he's got one. But at the same time, Steve's in on the pedal wag up to the rope as well, so multiple options for both guys. They've just got to work out which one's the best. One in the bag for both, literally just now. 2 good fish too.
Well, Steve, you're just over an hour in, mate. You've chopped and changed a fair bit early on. Have you worked out a game plan?
To be honest, not really. The Waggler's my banker at the minute, but with Andy catching on the pole, I'm not going to be able to beat him on the wag.
Right.
But at the minute, it's the only way. Unless there's a ripple on the water, I can't seem to get a bite.
Right.
And every bite I'm getting on the wag's like pretty tight to the rope.
You did set a bomb and pellet up as well. Were you thinking about going on the deck out by the rope?
Maybe, but at the minute, I just feel like the fish are up.
Yeah. They're showing as well high in the water,
Odd
aren't
ones
they, at the moment?
Yeah, keep showing. I just can't catch on pole, which is like what Andy's catching on.
Yeah.
I had one on it early. Don't know, it just seems really still where I am.
There you go. It's not that still, mate. Right, I'll leave you to it.
All right, no worries.
Good lad. Not one bites the dust.
Well, we are 2 hours in and they've pretty much picked up where they left off on the last match. You can't split them. There's one fish between them, but on weight, it's one of those. Steve has chopped and changed from the pole to the pellet wag, back to the pole to the pellet wag, and now he's back on the pole. However, Bennett has literally just gone on the pellet wag for the very first time and within 2 minutes had one. Interesting that it might seem like they're catching one after the other on telly, but let me tell you, they are working extremely hard for every one of these bites. This is not simple fishing. middle part of the match, and for the vast majority of the match, it's unsurprising that both guys found the same two methods to be the most productive. Pellet wag, long pole shallow. However, very rarely were both guys fishing the same line at the same time, because it was evident the fish were bouncing from one angler to the other. And it was down to those guys to make the best of those small windows of opportunity.
So after that start on the short pole, then went out onto the long pole. I've been pinging 4 to 6 pellets on this long pole. When you're big carp fishing, me personally, I don't feel like you're ever going to have loads of fish in your peg at one time. So you don't want to be firing lots and lots of bait in, because you're not going to have that sort of competition. So feeding sparingly, 4 to 6 pellets. You're almost just trying to pick off one fish at a time. And because the good stamp, you don't need to catch really, really quick. Rig wise for this is dead simple. Big carp love to watch bait falling through. It's almost like you're mugging them as they're swimming through your peg. So my shotting pattern consisted of 3 number 8s underneath my float, just slightly spread out, so that when I slapped my rig over, I had a nice natural fall. The float itself was a MW Cookie, and the line was 019 main line, same as the short rig, and an 017 hook length. Again, finished off with a slightly smaller hook this time. I used an 18s SMWG rather than a 16s, so I just wanted my hook pattern to be a little bit lighter and hopefully just make more of a natural fall. The pellets I chose to feed on the long pole was 6mm. Now again, you've got 2 options here. You can feed 8mm or 6mm. Me personally, I think 6mm just make a nice little bit of noise, and you can sort of ping 4 to 6 pellets, and then if you want to, you can be a little bit more aggressive. If you're not getting bites, you can start feeding 8 and 10s and make that little bit more noise. I found the best pattern was to sort of feed 4 to 6 pellets, give it a few seconds, and then slap my rig, and then on the 3rd slap, I'd leave my rig to settle, and hopefully that's when most of your bites will come, as your bait is just falling through.
On the waggler, my peg was a little bit narrower than Andy's, so I decided to try and fish it tight to the rope. There's not really any features in this lake, and I do know that the fish like to hug that rope, so my plan was fish that waggler sort of 2-3 metres off the rope, and try and fish it quite deep as well. It's sort of 10-12 foot in the middle, and I know again fish like to sit a little bit deeper, and by fishing deep I can cover more water. My setup for the waggler, I set 2 waggler rods up, 2 11-foot Aventus floats, both different though. I set one up with a foam waggler, one up with the balsa. On the reel, 6-pound Pulse Pro, really low diameter. I think it's a brilliant waggler line. It allows me to fish a very fine waggler line, which makes casting easy. Tackle itself, most of my fish came on the foam waggler, 4 SSG foam waggler. Below it I had 2 of the small super tight line stops, 1 above. That just means I can move the waggler and change the depth if I need to. Moving down, got a little QC swivel. That allows me to chop and change my hook length. Dead neat, very light, and doesn't tangle. Then hook length wise, I had 18 inches, 017 N gauge to a size 16 Super MWG hook, and a little bait band just for fishing the pellet.
The reasoning for moving out onto the waggler line is I felt like the fish had just basically backed off the pole line. So the plan was to keep feeding that pole line, and hopefully some fish would drift back onto it by taking my pole away. So I moved out onto the waggler, and I went out there and I started catching. Rig wise, a dead simple setup. I had 6-pound main line, and then onto that main line I had the smallest line stop above the float, and then I had a snap link swivel and 2 line stops below the float, and that's it. No shot down the line, just a 6-pound main line, and then a hook length of 022 N gauge to a size 16's SMWG. The feeding pattern for the waggler was basically a case of feeding 8 to 10 pellets twice and sometimes casting in amongst it, but to be honest that didn't really work. I caught most of my fish as my waggler landed, and what I ended up doing in the end is sort of chucking out there. If I didn't get a bite, feed some pellets twice, maybe twitch your float into it, and if you didn't get a bite after that, then repeat the process.
fish on the waggler. It looked like before it was going to be a nice easy match, just fishing pole shallow, doing really well, got a little bit of a lead, but I just can't seem to shake him off. It's neck and neck, exactly the same as the first match. I'm just hoping now for a good little run this last part of the match. Needed that one. Might just give me a slender lead, but literally no room for breathing.
Well, Steve, I reckon aside from the first hour of the first match, where you was like 5 fish to 1 up, this is probably the biggest gap until then that you've had. If I walked out there, I think I could stay above the surface. It seems in the last, I don't know, 20 minutes, those fish have properly got on you.
Just had a really good little run. Before that, I was just starting to think he got away from me. It's been like that all day though. Early on, I thought he was away from me. Got back, then I thought he was away from me again, got back, and there's still an hour to go.
Yeah, and I see you just primed the inside.
I've primed the edge, and like there's mud coming up, but I don't know whether it's silvers or a carp.
How long would you leave it before going down and
I'm gonna
trying
feed
it,
it.
or will you stay on this one?
If this carried on going, I'd just stay on it, because
Right.
I'm not going to come off feeding fish, but I'm going to feed it again in like 5 minutes, just so it's there if I need it.
So what we got, an hour to go pretty much. How long would you leave an inside line like that before having a go? Or would you just leave it down to see the
Well,
sides?
I've put 4 big pots down there already. I'm going to put another 2 or 3 in a minute.
Right.
Then I'm going to leave it 5 minutes. And if I haven't had another fish on the wag, just have a quick look on it. Literally a 2-minute look. Probably not even that. If I don't get a sign, get back on the wag, because it could be wasted time.
Yeah, well, I don't think there's an awful lot of time left, to be fair. Like I said, just over an hour. And I think you're probably a strong favourite as it stands right now with that run of fish. So I'll leave you to it, mate. Good luck. And
Cheers,
well
thanks,
done
Lee.
so far.
Steve has just had a flurry of unanswered fish. Both guys know exactly what they're doing. They're fishing up in the water on the pole or on the pellet waggler. So 2 methods absolutely sorted, but it does very much feel like the match is turning against Andy Bennett at the moment. If he's got a trick up his sleeve, now's the time to pull it out.
Andy, the match is kind of slipping away.
Yeah.
You need to do something to change your fortune, really.
Yeah.
A lot of people will be in this position and start flapping and, you know, basically casting all over the shop. What's going through your mind and what's the process?
Well, I had a good run on the waggler in the middle of the match and then I seemed to stop catching. So I've come on the long pole, caught a couple on that. I've gone back out on the waggler and I'm not catching, but Steve's had 4 or 5 now, so for me to catch up, because I feel like I'm slightly behind now, I need to do something different. Otherwise, the best I'll probably do is match him fish for fish.
Yeah.
But to be honest, he's getting more bites than me on that waggler, so I probably won't match him fish for fish, because when I caught on it, Steve didn't.
Yeah.
So I feel like the fish have drifted, so what I've got to do now is make a decision, and I'm going to fish short, I'm going to stop feeding the waggler, and basically just keep pinging a few on that long pole, and I'm just going to try and see what's best now. I need to catch up. I need 3 or 4 quick fish.
Yeah, so keep it short, keep it quick.
Yeah.
Fish to your strengths and fish to the speed.
Yeah, hopefully catch some bigger fish as well short.
Right, okay, buddy. Well, you need a couple on the bounce. I wish you all the very best, mate.
In the last hour of the match, both guys had a strong finish. Andy on the short pole, Steve down the edge. But would the slight difference in tactics decide the match? It'd be interesting to see what the boys think.
I always felt if I was going to win, the margin line was going to be a really important part of my fishing. So I spent a bit of time clearing it out when I got here, made sure I got a bit of a view to the next platform. Platform was an obvious sort of spot to feed in front of. People tip bait, bait gets spilt there. Fish get used to feeding in front of the platform. So made sure I got a nice clear view to the platform. I had a great little spell on the waggler with 2 hours to go, which sort of got my nose in front. and I didn't want to come off it, so I left it 15 minutes more, had a couple more fish, and then I've put 4 big pots of what I call a Bombay mix, casters, 2 mil pellets, corn, a few dead maggots, put them in basically on the platform to my right, and gone straight back on the waggler with a view to, like, I've sort of set a bit of a trap. Now there's a bit of bait there, I've got it there, I can keep an eye on it, and it was a bit flat in the edge, but the one advantage of it being flat, I could see if the water coloured up, I could see if anything swirled there, so I didn't sort of have to go on it without knowing there were any fish there. After feeding the 4 pots, I had another sort of 10 minutes on the wag, but it was starting to die. I could just tell the wind had gone a bit cold, so I put another 2 pots in. That might seem like a lot of bait, but it's not a lot in the grand scheme of things. It's just to make sure there's going to be bait there when I want to make the switch. My rig for margin fishing is quite interesting, because even though it was only sort of 2 foot, 2 and a bit foot deep, I like a heavy float. When you get big carp feeding in the swim, the float has to be stable. You fish too light a rig and they'll wash it all over the place. So your float's going around and around like that, and your hook bait doesn't settle, and you tend to foul up more fish. So I've used a 0.5 Mick Wilkinson margin, 0.19 N-gauge main line, 0.19 N-gauge 4-inch hook length, and a size 14 XS spade hook. Really strong hook, but nice and wide gate, razor sharp. So when you do hook a big fish, they're not going to come off. Elastic Choice Red Hydro. I like Red Hydro. It's actually softer than people think. And I just think it's a nice elastic for like 10-pound fish. Lastly, shotting pattern. I do love a really like loosely strung bulk and a slow fall, but when you're margin fishing, I need to pin that bait to the deck and keep it there. So nice tight bulk, 8 number 8, literally bottom one 4 inches from the hook, and spaced at sort of 0.5 of a centimetre intervals. So I can literally feed and lower the hook bait straight on the feed, and I know it's sitting just where I want. Hook baits for edge fishing, there's 2 for me. I went in straight away on double corn. The reason I went in on double corn was the water was colouring up, but just because it's colouring up doesn't mean it's carp. It could have been silvers. So double corn to start, see what's there, caught 2 carp, then had a few indications, couldn't catch one, big bunch of maggots, 8, 9 maggots. That always seems to get you a bite.
So moving on later into the match, I fished the pole and waggler for the most of the middle part of the match, but in my mind I knew I needed a line where I could potentially go in and bag up. I didn't feel like the edge would be right because of the roots and stuff, so my main focus was that short pole line. I caught one early on it and lost a couple, so I knew there was fish to be had there, fish to be hooked there, and the wind was kind, it was off our back as well, and basically I'd been chucking sort of 8 or 10 pellets there religiously all day long, hoping to gather some fish in and then hopefully go in and, you know, have a good run on it to finish off with. Later in the match I dropped on it, potted a few pellets in, and straight away I got a bite and caught a fish. I went back in and potted a few more pellets, and I didn't really seem to get a response, and that's when I knew I needed to start upping my feed a little bit. So I started throwing pellets more regular, and towards the end of the match it was a case of not feeding anything with a pot and just throwing 6 to 10 pellets twice, so you know 12 to 20 pellets in total, trying to draw fish in my peg all the time. As I've hooked a fish, throw some pellets in. When I come back, throw some pellets in. By the time I get back out there, throw a few more pellets in. So I'm constantly making noise and constantly bringing more fish into my peg. And I had a good little run doing that towards the end. The rig at the end was exactly the same as the start. The only thing I changed is I wanted to make sure that the wind wasn't pushed, because the wind was off our back, I wanted to make sure it wasn't pushing my rig off the shelf. So what I actually did is early doors, I had about 12 inches of line from my float to my tip. I actually chopped that down to about 6 inches, and I had a number 8 cube halfway between my float and my tip. And what this meant is that my float wouldn't just drift off the shelf, because you're fishing just on the shelf where it's sort of rolling down. I wanted to keep it on that shelf. I didn't want my bait to be sort of 1 inch or 2 off the bottom. And that's really important when you're fishing on shelves, is make sure you're not letting your float drift past it, and you're really accurate so that you're fishing either an inch, you know, I fished sort of plumbed up 1 inch over depth. I wanted to make sure that my bait was nice and still, because when these big fish come in your peg, they can move it about and your rig can get pushed about, and that's when it'll lead to foul hookers. So accuracy is really important when you're shelf fishing.
Well, we've just ticked into the last 30 minutes. Andy's come close, Steve's gone down the edge. They're both catching big uns and on a regular basis. I'm not sure it's going to be enough for Andy, but I tell you what, it's a blinding finish. Well, chaps, I make that the end of another fantastic 5-hour match. 10 hours in total. Can we split them? There's only one way to find out. Let's go to the scales. Boys, all out.
Fishing wise, I think it's been fish for fish. I think it's not going to be close because I think Steve's had a lot of bigger fish than I have. So I don't really think the weights will do it justice, but up until that last hour, it was neck and neck, and then he's had some big fish down the edge, so I think that'll just sway it in his favour.
I think you can always fish better. I think I fished a good match. It's been tough. I'm up against probably the best commercial angler the country's ever seen, so it's always going to be tough, but it's been nip and tuck. I thought he had me. After an hour, I thought I'm done. Didn't give up, but you start to think he's not going to let me back in. Got back in, then he got ahead again. Then I got back in and thought, I've got him now. And then he had a great little run, and then I had a couple of edge fish.
If I could have changed anything, maybe I wish I had an edge line. My edge line was a little bit rooty, and you definitely pick out bigger fish there. I've caught well on my short line, but my fish were sort of averaging £6, whereas Steve's were sort of averaged 10. And I think come the end of it, I think there's only one fish in it, but I think, you know, Steve could have sort of £30–40 more than what I've had.
In my honest opinion, and I might jinx myself here, I think I've just edged him, but I don't know how big his fish were. So, but from what I've seen, if you said to me you've got to make a decision, I'd say I've done him by maybe £10.
Well, ladies and gents, that is the end of a fantastic 5-hour match. Once again, boys, you didn't let us down. It was fantastic to watch. In hindsight, would you do anything different?
Yeah, I'd have gone down the edge a little bit earlier. I reckon 10 minutes earlier would have put another £10 in the net, but...
Can't argue what it did for you, though. Bagger?
Yeah, I definitely would have made sure I could find an edge swim, because I think the stamper fish is what's been the difference, and probably started shallow rather than short early doors, because I feel like I've not seen many fish moving, but I feel like there would have been a few. I'd have got off to a quicker start.
Yeah, well, I'll be absolutely honest with you, I thought it was a one-sided match until we did the weigh-in, and it is a damn sight closer than I gave it credit for. I have the scores on the doors. Bagger, with a fantastic weight, and you had a few ups and downs as well, of £185 9 ounces, at the start of the day, you couldn't have argued with that, could you?
No, I'd have took that at the start of the day.
Absolutely, it's almost twice what we thought was going to win it. However, you might be double Fishing Mania champion. But with a weight of 199 pounds 9 ounces, Steve, you absolutely smashed it today. It was an honour to watch. You are the double champion.
Taking him back to school.
The result today, a bit disappointed. I do feel like my peg was worth a little bit more. If I'd have been here once before, I feel like I could have definitely caught £200.
To beat Bennett 2-0 on commercial fisheries is beyond anything I could have sort of dreamt of. Yes, I used to do this sort of fishing, but he is the best in the game. So to take him back to school, so to speak, even if it was 2 narrow wins, is absolutely unbelievable.
Today I should have won really, but massive well done to Steve. Doesn't make any mistakes, you know, and he's done the business. So fair play. Hopefully next year we'll come back and I'll have another do at him.
Jack, well done. It does go to show, even though there has to be a winner and a loser, it was so tight, and the very best of the best, the dividing line between success and failure is literally, and that's you know what. Guys, well done. It's been an honour. See you again next year, ladies and gents.